So today at Solus Partners, we are proud to present Drew and Dominic with nLyze. Drew, could you tell us a little bit about the origin story of nLyze and how you came up with the concept?
Yeah, absolutely. So nLyze is a boutique consultancy. It's a software house as well. It came back from work that I've been doing my entire life, kind of straddling that space between cybersecurity and artificial intelligence. And what we saw was a need to bring in some very specific skills to help bridge that gap. And more than anything, we found that it needed to work in a way that allowed people to work better with AI. So we knew AI was coming because we've all kind of come from that tech field. But what we wanted to do was say, okay, so when it gets here, how do you trust it? What can you do that's a real meaningful way to protect yourself?
Gotcha. And so, with that human AI adoption phase that everyone's seeing to varying degrees, how does nLyze, I guess, compete or position itself relative to kind of the common ChatGPT user of the world?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So the common chat GPT user of the world, we're not yet. That comes later in this year. The launch that we started on the 2nd of January is focused on the data scientist and also the team that sits around the data scientist, the people that are actually concerned with things like responsible, secure, verifiable, and private AI.
That's really helpful, especially I imagine then as you look towards more government and enterprise use cases. What I guess would be kind of the dream use case for nLyze?
Yeah, yeah. So there's a couple of dream use cases because again, we're partly a consultancy and partly a company that's building products. So one of our dreams happened last year. We got a Fortune 500 customer that, from a cybersecurity point of view, is a really good badge. And because it's right in our sweet spot around identity, it's the kind of thing that we can hone our processes, really get everything operationalized to be able to have that services part of our organization go. And now this year we get to really focus in on all the research that we've been doing for 5 years this month to get ready for these big product launches. First data, then people.
It's awesome. I guess congrats on the traction with Fortune 500. That's pretty unusual out the gate from venture.
It was pretty awesome.
I'm just curious, how did you guys land that, and like, what were some of the key lessons like that other prospective founders might be able to learn from?
Yeah, I mean, the key lesson is through your career, and for me, that's 30 years out in the field, and then a bit now. Make relationships and make them count. And I think in our case, it wasn't a question of if, it was a question of which ones. So we specifically looked for a customer that was going to be interested in transitioning from our identity and cybersecurity services into our AI products. Because one of the things we're doing with our services that are different is we're building them in a way that they're compatible in an agentic world. And really that requires a different services mindset. The stuff that I learned from being at Avanade and Accenture, just it doesn't apply the same way that it did 20 years ago.
So, I mean, so really starting kind of with that end user in mind from the beginning is kind of what I'm taking away from it. What, I guess, as it relates then to service-based security offerings and then moving more into product, how, I guess, do you guys think about just architecture and governance or just then kind of the so what, if you will, of these large
Yeah.
data projects?
I'm gonna answer a question that I know you kind of posed at the beginning because I think it's going to lead to that pretty well. When we thought this up, there were actually three light bulb moments for us. There were 3 points at which we said, "Hey, things are going to be changing, and they have to." The first one for me was I was sitting at a table in 2002. I had been at a little company that got bought by Compaq and HP 3 days after they announced their merger. So we got to go through that whole thing, and we're sitting there looking at a X bigger project than HP or Compaq had ever done before, an outsourcing deal. And I can talk about it because it's decades ago with Procter and Gamble. And the first day they drop us this USB, and it has a 150-page proposal and 15,000 pages of supporting documentation, and it took us a month to get through that, just to figure out who are the people we needed. The seven of us at the beginning became 150 people just on the sales team, 4,000 once we actually, did the moving over that's in an outsourcing day one. And I knew that that model, the way that outsourcing was being done, it wouldn't work when the world became microservices, and it was already starting into that process. Now we're in another kind of sea change. So I spent over a decade where I got super deep in cyber and doing incident response and being a CISO, and had kind of stepped a little away from my earlier patent apps and stuff for machine learning, not because I wasn't interested, just because the cyber at that time, we were getting hacked, right and left, and working in highly regulated customer space, it was just one of those things where you had to do. And then I come back, and all of a sudden, attention was all I needed. I wasn't paying attention, and the whole world shifted beneath my feet, but it didn't. Because when you find, a little bit deeper on nLyze and our founders, you'll find other people like me that have been in this for 30 years. For 20 years, we've been doing research. And this just gives us the opportunity to take that research that we've done, productize it, make it really cool and really meaningful, and then offer that to our services customers for the long run so that they're able to take advantage of not just the research that we've done for the last 20 years, but the research that we're doing today and tomorrow.
So, with your background and your team's background in cybersecurity and just kind of core enterprise project design and development, as it relates to kind of Fortune 500 like clients, how did you guys take that contextual learning and understanding and knowledge and apply it into nLyze's framework and just use case?
Yeah, absolutely. So cybersecurity and even more specifically, identity and privacy are at the heart of absolutely everything that we do. We believe that the interactions between human beings and the robots, whether they be agentic AIs or actual physical beings, it needs to be one that's based on trust. But I also come from a military family. It needs to be trust but verify. We need to know that this is actually what it's doing. And when I started hearing about, hidden layer and digging into the math on that one, and that's really where Dominic came into it. I was able to see that cybersecurity has a really cool implication in machine learning. It's that very few other domains have an established level of fact that are organized hierarchically, taxonomically from a machine learning perspective, that you can actually take something like the cybersecurity framework and you can bump it up against a model in the right way and come up with the visualizations that allow you to not necessarily see in the hidden layer, but see in the layer that all of us deal with every day, where we're doing retrieval augmented generation and we're doing vector databases and we're using the input side of AI and of ML. I think the problem with attention is all you need is it's not all you need. That hidden layer right now, it's got some things that we need to do to it to make it a little bit more visible. And companies like nLyze are doing things. But what we found was a completely untapped space is on that input side, where it's just critically important to RAG and to vector. There really weren't a lot of people specializing in that. So we wanted to take it the next level and kind of bring some of those things in. Make sense?
At a high level, I think so. Dominic, I guess I'm curious, could you give us a little bit more detail on kind of what that means from a security standpoint?
Yeah, so, I agree with Drew. I think that cybersecurity is a very sort of appropriate kind of place to try something like this out because we have all of these very rigorous standards and we have very sort of precise standardized definitions of terms. And so I'm a little bit kind of later to the game on cybersecurity. I definitely don't have the kind of industry bona fide that Drew has. But one thing that's sort of become clear to me, the more we talk about it and the more we see with our tool how some of these models are interpreting a lot of key security concepts is that, a lot of these models, not to put it too simply, but it seems like a lot of them are just kind of plain wrong about certain ideas and how they interpret them relative to other concepts, and how they're sort of encoding and interpreting and relating these very key cybersecurity concepts. And so, as security firms start thinking more about how to integrate AI into their workflow, it's very, very important that we make sure that these models are interpreting concepts appropriately and are reasoning appropriately about how they relate and giving us results that are appropriate and that are trustworthy, to use the key word, and that are useful to practitioners.
So what you're seeing is a real-time interpretation of the conversation that we're having. The system that we've come up with is able to build visualizations based on the embedding layer in real time. So unlike the generative side, on the output side, where you have to wait for inference to happen and turns to happen inside the model, on the input side, it's something that is very deterministic. If you give it the same text over and over again, it gives you the same point. And that was our second aha moment, is that there is the ability to look across many models and come up with a visualization that actually works. So when we look at the state of the art right now, UMAP and TSNE, sometimes combined with PCA, those visualization techniques are, they're inherently not so deterministic or non-deterministic. So when you look at model A versus model B, let's say you're taking a llama versus a Phi, or versus a DeepSeek, or versus a Grok, what it looks like for one, it doesn't look anything like the same for the other. And what we knew is that from a cybersecurity point of view, that could be disastrous. We thought that, maybe 10 years into this, we might hit 1 million models. We already hit 1 million models in 2025. There's almost that many just on Hugging Face, between all of the models that are, big models, frontier models that, somebody has uploaded and shared, or all the different retrainings and quantizations and blends and other things that are going on in that space. And when you think about this from a cybersecurity point of view, and I was at Black Hat talking with folks about this summer, that's really dangerous. Because if it takes me, let's say that I go do a MTEB, that kind of benchmark against a model to look inside it, it may be hours or even days before those are going to come back to me with a meaningful information about the model. We wanted to be able to do a fingerprint, something that's more like a human fingerprint, where we could look at the model and the way that it's interpreting things quickly and turn that into information that we can study and information that our customers can study. So one of the big things that we're doing this month is we're launching the nLyze.ai site. And that's the site, like I said, that speaks to our data science customers, and not just really the data scientists, but also the teams that work around them, the folks that are in cybersecurity or in enterprise architecture, or even in finance, that are trying to, conceptualize things that people keep saying our data scientists don't know how to look inside, or our data scientists think of them as a black box. We think that from a cyber point of view, that can't be true. We need to have some sort of fingerprint, so that as we're looking at these models, we're able to do quick comparisons and find out, does one model look like another model? And that's the thing that we thought was pretty exciting. But as we started to do it, we got to our third big, aha moment, is that we could do it over and over and over and over again. And so when we first kind of went public in our talking last April, we had done about 10,000 models. And we were pretty excited about that. That was really the point that Dominic was getting in and starting to lead us on our AI and our data science. And what we found, maybe Dominic, you want to talk a little bit about, what was your aha moment? How long did it take you to understand what I'm saying? Because let's just say that even the data scientists take a while to figure this out. And as a college student working post-grad stuff in machine learning and AI. Once you got that aha moment, what did it do to you?
Yeah. So I would say my aha moment, definitely revolved around this stuff right here, the depth chart and everything that goes along with it. And I would say it happened fairly early on. I was trying to think earlier about how long it is that we've been talking and working together. I want to say it's a year and a half, somewhere
Yeah,
around there.
yeah,
So it just so happened that at sort of the stage in my college career where we were first beginning to talk and you were first beginning to show me this stuff, that I was taking a lot more kind of in-depth nitty-gritty type classes about LLMs and embeddings and these sorts of things. And so it just so happened that when we were first talking, I was kind of getting the LLM knowledge and the data science knowledge that I needed to sort of appreciate what's being shown here. And so once that clicked and once I realized that it was a combination of these kind of vector plotting and comparison techniques with embeddings and embedding spaces as I understood them, realizing that this was kind of a new combination of different techniques and ideas and realizing that it was showing us useful information in a way that I'd never really seen it done before. That was really, really exciting. And then more recently, as I take more and more AI classes and I sort of branch out into more types of classes that deal with the societal impacts and sort of the ethics side of things and the safety side of things, I've sort of come to a new understanding that this is sort of one useful piece of what I think is kind of a broader effort. I've heard, in the papers that I've read and sort of the professors that I've spoken to, you hear a lot about this idea of transparent AI or explainable AI. It seems like this is kind of a term du jour right now, as far as discussions about, everybody is now using these black box models, and most users don't really understand what's going on beneath the hood. How can we better explain the decision making that's going on? How can we explain the reasoning? How can we sort of talk about how these models work in a way that people understand? I think that this represents one sort of very useful and novel way that we might illustrate these things to people. There's a lot of aspects of models that are just very, very sort of opaque and very black box. And even the engineers, they're dealing with, weights and parameters that number in the trillions. Yeah, Drew's got the shirt, but it's, even they can't really explain to you what's going on. It's all of these absurdly kind of large, complex, and at its core, it's all linear algebra, but it's very large and very complex and big linear algebra. And so to the extent that we can sort of zero in on one part of it, like in our case, the embedding layer, and I think that's a really good place to sort of focus our energy, because we can talk about these embeddings in relation to words that people know and semantics and things like that. So realizing that this is kind of a new way to give users a glimpse under the hood without them needing an advanced degree in statistics or data science or anything like that, I think was a really exciting moment for me.
Yeah, I think this is
yeah,
a really helpful overview. This is cool.
yeah. And let me go to the third aha moment, because there was a point at which we stopped just being about the visualization. When you think about our little tagline, we want to change the way you see AI, right? And that's pretty meaningful to be able to say that, we want to change the way that people generally see AI. So that was pretty heady. To come back and actually get the data gave us a third aha moment. So our third aha moment comes from taking a look at the way that the embeddings layers of thousands of models has changed over time. We're now at the point where we've scanned about 100,000 models. We're gonna go live with access to about 75,000 of them that we feel pretty confident in. It's a process. There's some invention that's been going on. But once we got the point of stable and able to start sending our agents out to actually get the information about the model. So actually download the model, load the model, do some embedding interaction with the model, and then bring that data back so that we could look at it. What we found is that our fingerprinting method itself yields some really incredible results that we just didn't anticipate. And now we're digging in everything, and really part of our service that we're launching this month is to give other people access to our data so that they can start to make their own inference about that. But what we did was we looked at the way that the embeddings have changed month by month by month. So what you see on the right hand side, we'll start with the blue, is you see the number of models that we had scanned, and this chart is a bit old, but the number of models that we had scanned for each month um, out of Hugging Face. So we had scanned, for 2025 February, about 5,000 different models. And those models are a mix. They're going to be Phi models. They're going to be Grok models. They're going to be a little bit of Llama, actually a whole lot of Llama, and a little bit of DeepSeek. But there are thousands of models now that are published every month. And what we did was we looked at each month independently. So when you look at the rows in this graph, that is independently calculated. What is the centroid? So from a machine learning point of view, what's the point at which all of those different embeddings average out using our special distance method? And then how does it compare for month to month? And when we saw what's in the upper right hand corner, the standard deviations on that, our jaws dropped. It was a pretty powerful moment because what we found is that regardless of how many models that come in the month, or regardless of the different trajectories of the models, they're actually pretty consistent. When you're talking about 0.02, 0.03, from a mathematical point of view, that's meaningful. To be able to say that, these bands, these rows, month to month, are pretty consistent. But the other thing that we were able to see that was really exciting is the ones that are more lit up, the ones that have more variation in those are the concepts that human beings themselves just can't agree upon. So the models are shifting in their points of view on topics. We love to talk about, from my book 20 years ago, rapid, readiness, architecture, process, integration, deployment. Go plug that in to any LLM and ask it what those words have in common. You will see the outline of my book kind of spit out from there. So it's pretty cool. But those also became the points at which we can use any points, but those are the points that we anchor conceptually our 100,000 model scan. We have a lot of other data that allows us to, show a lot of different relationships, but those are the ones that we start with because not only are they meaningful from a data science point of view, because they're pretty stable concepts, but they're also meaningful from like an interpreting cybersecurity point of view. So if you're not using this just purely for data science and you're using our services for security and identity, what you're able to do is you're able to take this and pop it up against your policies, for example, where I was talking with research labs. They want to figure out a way to use this to identify classified information. So like when it's accidentally managed to leak into a model. And so those are the kind of things that our research side is really interested in. And that's the kind of stuff that Dominic really leads up and is making some pretty cool headway.
Fascinating. This is well beyond my finance background, but the use cases I imagine are tremendous with the cross-sectional testing ability that you guys outlined here, I think in a great degree.
And we took an extra step. So one of the reasons it took us so long to come and talk publicly. So we have a relationship with the Rake School at the University of Nebraska at Lincoln, and they are absolutely incredible at the way that they teach people how to design solutions. It's part of their business school, but it's got some Harvard level kind of technologists learning how to do amazing things with tech. And when we went to them and kind of told them what we were doing and had a just real heart to heart, they said, "Oh no, I hired Dominic to come write a paper for me, and he wrote that paper. We haven't showed it to anybody." They said, take a little time and figure out what is this worth commercially. So we went through the process of filing for an international patent and doing all the things that we could to give our customers, whether our product customers or our service customers, an edge in being able to apply these technologies. And that's why we've paired that product and service together, is because we think in the AI age, that's where it's at.
Absolutely. I mean, you outlined a little bit on the security that is being used by certain governmental entities. Could you tell us a little bit more on the commercial side as to like how certain groups are looking to partner with you
Oh
guys,
yeah.
whether it's in the service or product?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Couple of interesting ones. So the first to know is that so I was a healthcare CISO at the time that ChatGPT came out, right? And if you can imagine being in with government with three federal government contracts. So imagine being in that scenario and all of a sudden people are starting to bounce data off of these things and patient data. We
It's
we
probably a
don't
nightmare.
have yeah, we don't have standards for that. The US government has a set of standards. The National Institute of Standard and Technology have been publishing for years, well curated by pretty much everybody in the world in cybersecurity. One of them is the NIST 800-53, which is the cybersecurity framework. And what we did was that was what we used for our ontological fact base, the thing that we studied against all those different models. And that has applications all over the place. So the first one that we're really excited about is here's one of the things that we found from this data. It's one thing to be average, it's another thing to be accurate. When we ranked things, the first time we ranked them, ranked them by how close they were to the average. And what we found was that that was actually a really bad way of doing it because the average is kind of over here, but right. So, for example, it clusters these concepts. So if you're talking about identity management and you're talking about access management and you're talking about login indicators, those are three different levels of those cybersecurity standard, and they have three different distinct connotations from an AI model point of view. And what we wanted to be able to do and what we can do with depth chart is to actually look and see, does this model place the incident management next to the problem resolution, or does it put incident management next to media destruction? Which, when you think about it, even the average person is going to say, I don't know if I agree that those things fit together. And what we find is that there are models, and some of them, the most highly downloaded models, that are just plain wrong on the embedding side, not necessarily on the output side. And that's one of the things that we're actually looking at is, are these LLMs having to do too much work on the output side and past the hidden layer because they're just so bad on the embedding side, and it's just so critical to the way that the model functions, particularly when you're getting into large model, but small models too.
The overview and just the depth of what you guys can visualize within and really applying math to some more esoteric concepts here is really impressive. What are some of the aspects or avenues that you see as the most compelling for the next 12 to 24 months for your company?
Yeah, absolutely. So this month we're signing people up at nLyze.ai to get into private preview and public preview. We're thinking probably toward the summer, but sometime by the end of this year, we're going to go into the consumer space and we're going to go in there hard. You're going to see things in teams. We announced on the 1st of January that you'll see some stuff in Visual Studio Code plugins that are actually coming this month because we just think they're so important. You're going to see some things just in the general tools that people use on the Microsoft platform all the time, because that's one of our strongest partners. It's not that we don't do the other stuff too. It's just that, I spent almost 30 years in their channel, and they have a platform where we can do a lot of really cool things really quick. So the stuff that we've got coming out in the consumer space, that's really the part that excites me now, because that's the everyday work of protecting people from AI, but also giving them new ways to look at it. It's not that we think that AI isn't a good thing. It's that we think that AI needs to have, some reasonable expectations just like the rest of them.
Makes a ton of sense. And then, Dominic, I'd be curious on like a data standpoint or machine learning aspect, how has the company evolved over your engagement? And then where do you see that going?
Yeah, so it's it's been a process of making a lot of tweaks to the depth chart, and sort of the surrounding features and how we present them to people and how we communicate key information. I remember sort of seeing the depth chart for the first time, and that was kind of the main tool that we had going on the ML side of things. But over time, it's been really cool to see one just how the chart has changed and how we've changed it in regards to how it shows clusters and how it plots things and that sort of thing. But there have been all kinds of new bells and whistles on that side of things that we've been working on and that Drew's been working very, very hard on. And so he talked a little bit earlier about what we call the talking chart, sort of this tool that applies our methodology to a live conversation as it's happening. So that's been another big one that I'm very excited about and that I'm sure will be very, very interesting to users once it's unveiled. So yeah, just seeing kind of this gradual process of, this site and this tool looking better and better and working better and better and being able to do so much more. It's really a pretty dramatic difference.
When Dominic came to help me out, it was you could only look at one chart. You could it was black and white ish, single kind of color. There was no clustering or other stuff going on. In fact, when we did our first launch, it was all pretty much monochromatic. So a lot of the frankly, beauty that you see in it is a lot of work that Dominic's poured into it and I've poured into it.
I mean, the visualization itself, I can only imagine the depth of work that's gone into that, especially to relate some pretty complex topics into a working man's everyday knowledge, I think is really helpful. In terms of kind of the transformations that you guys have seen with your existing customers, how are they seeing some ROI on what is almost an AI dash human relationship with this tool?
Well, right before the new year, I was having a conversation with the chief information security officer at our customer, and she was talking about some strategy work that had been done, that spoke to identity and spoke to security, but completely overlooked AI. And she said the number one thing that my boss, the CIO, wants from me this year is to know what to do with AI. And I think that transformational discussion is going on in every firm. It is how much do we trust it? How much do we risk on it? How much do we invest in it? How much do we find partners who invest in it? And I think those conversations are ongoing. I think our view of it is that we can interject a lot of quantifiable data into that discussion and to be able to say, hey, not only can you use AI to do fun things with chatbots and maybe some customer service and some employee productivity, but what if we could use it to do real meaningful work? And that's really where we see is we think, NVIDIA and Microsoft and Google and X, they all have plays in AI. OpenAI obviously has this huge market space, and the whole market has flocked a lot of money into there. It's happening. I have a kid who works in environmental systems and data centers. We know what's going on right now. But what we also know is that it's not the way that it is today sustainable. If we were to have absolutely every human on earth interacting with a chat bot right now, it would all come pretty quickly crashing to the ground. There's just not enough GPU bandwidth to get that done. The tools are getting better, but again, remember our advantage is we do a lot of really cool work on the input side. And what we found is that there are some spaces there where you can do things like help a customer align their policy with the reality of their IT standards or the reality of their project management data, or bring all of that data together and be able to actually visualize it the same way that we're looking at concepts inside a model. You can look at discussions inside a model, or you can look at documents inside a model. So once you have a good one that knows what topics go together, you can apply it in a lot of different ways. We think that, the first one is going to be helping people get cybersecurity insurance. We think, the whole picture on that has drastically changed. If you haven't seen the numbers on this one, when I got done with my dozen years of doing just deep, like identity and incident response kind of stuff and defender kind of stuff, the cost of a new novel 0 day was somewhere in the thousands of dollars. So it took, between people time and computer time and everything else, thousands of dollars to get a good effective 0 day, could get a foothold, get you into an organization, go do your ransomware. In the time that it's taken me to come out of consulting and back into consulting, that cost went from thousands to hundreds to tens to last year. There was a study that came out that put it was somewhere between $1 and $2 a hack,
Hmm.
because AI is coming in and just, pounding at things to find the holes in them. The problem is that at the same time, the cost of defending against that same hack has actually gone up by maybe as much, because it's coming at you faster. You used to have 6 months that an advanced persistent threat, somebody's sitting there on your network ready to attack you, but just trying to get the right time. You used to have, 6 months, sometimes a year. Now you could be, literally in the hours, or I think we're probably getting pretty close to minute, where they could be sitting there with the right thing on your network, access all these wonderful agentic systems that we've created that are more than happy to help them out, because model context protocol, it stinks. Love, 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 love agentic. I use it myself. We use it for a lot of our testing stuff because it's really, really good at that. And those are the kind of use cases that we're super into, is helping people build, test harnesses for, like, we've got 20 plus years worth of code, right? Trying to go out and write tests for that when, half of it was written before automated testing was even a thing, would be a massive investment for, a relatively small company. We want to make it a lot easier for everybody to be able to protect themselves and to frankly be more aware of what's going on. So we're going to bring a lot of information. The information that you see on the screen now, we're not only looking at a model and seeing things like, how are one concept related to another concept, but we're also seeing, information from that Hugging Face model, and the ability to actually bring those models in and train them yourselves. So if we haven't gone through and trained a model, or if you have your own model and you don't necessarily want to make it available to the world by putting it on Hugging Face, we're going to give you the ability to take this same technology and apply it to your own machine learning. So that's a pretty natural avenue. We've already got a couple things in the Microsoft marketplace, and you're going to see a lot more of it come this year.
Well, I think you guys are riding that wave and are well positioned for the growing focus on security and governance. So this is, I mean, fascinating tech, uh, and just a great overview just to outline some of the key features. But obviously, there's a whole lot under the hood here. So this is very neat.
It's fun.
I guess in terms of just kind of like final thoughts here, what would be kind of the dream state or dream groups that you guys are looking to connect with over the next 12 months to 24?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're not looking to take on large investors. We're self-funded, and we have been since the start, but we are doing some things with investors that want smaller stakes, but some pretty incredible technology to take to the market. We're doing things with, protecting our IP and getting patents in place. So obviously organizations that are looking to license technologies like these, we're interested in talking to them. But the thing that, frankly, the most challenging thing for us is that when you're really, really good at cybersecurity, you don't tend to speak a lot publicly. The things that, I've told the world over the last 30 years were intentionally muted. Now we need to get the message out, is that, there is a hidden layer, but not all of it is hidden. And that people can interact with AI in ways that are very different. To, kind of bring it back around, I had a plane flight on Friday with a guy who runs the biomechanics, or one of the folks in the professors in the biomechanics lab at the University of Nebraska. and they're looking at how do we get, when somebody can't walk or somebody can't see or somebody has lost, sense or motion. They're looking at ways to take artificial intelligence and machine learning and apply those to making real lives better. And it didn't take 10 minutes into our conversation to know that one, we were going to talk the entire 2 hour flight, but also that there were applications that we haven't even seen in his work in biomechanics because of the way that we've, been looking outside the box at things like visualizing the machine learning. So people that are doing research, people that are looking to license, razor's edge kind of technology, and people that are looking for services that really, take advantage of our advantage in the way that we look at data and information and AI and people.
Makes a ton of sense. Well, I think that the use cases here are just vast, and the fact that you guys have a really a horizontal, I would say, foothold within that embedding layer and the ability then to visualize it as you've outlined here, I think is just incredibly powerful. So, Drew and Dominic, I really can't thank you guys enough for your time today.
Steve, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.